Someone making an appeal to authority asserts that an argument, like their own argument or someone else's, is good or bad, or that a claim is true or false because an authority, or someone they're claiming is an authority, says it's true or false, or good or bad. The supposed authority could be a person, a book, an organization, or any other source of information, and this can be done in a totally proper way. Much of the time, there's absolutely nothing wrong with doing this. Plenty of sources are actual qualified authorities on whatever topic, but where you run into trouble and your appeal to authority becomes fallacious is when there's good reason to think that your source is not necessarily reliable as a source of information on the topic at hand. Let's consider this conversation. Mike told me Beethoven was heavily influenced by Mozart. So what? What does Mike know? He has a PhD in musicology. This would probably make Mike a reliable authority on this topic. What if the conversation went like this? Mike told me Beethoven was heavily influenced by Mozart. So what? What does Mike know? He looked it up online. This would not necessarily qualify Mike as an authority on the topic. An appeal to authority assumes this type of implicit premise. Almost anything that X says about Y is probably true. If we don't have good reason to think that this premise is true, then it's a bad appeal to authority, a fallacy, and the ensuing argument cannot be sound. Almost anything that someone says about Beethoven's influences who has looked it up online is probably true. Mike looked up Beethoven's influences online. Mike told me Beethoven was heavily influenced by Mozart, therefore Beethoven was probably heavily influenced by Mozart. We are relying on a false premise. But let's replace the first premise with almost anything that a PhD musicologist says about Beethoven's influences is probably true. Now we're working with true premises, but notice that I'm saying in my premise, anything or almost anything that X says about Y is probably true. What an expert on a topic believes about that topic is not necessarily true, but we can say that it is probably true if it's established that the expert is reliable. Experts don't necessarily decide what's true. They merely report on findings in order to tell you what is probably true. And if they discover contradicting evidence, they'll report something else. But determining whether a source is an authority can be tricky. Different people and different audiences have different assumptions about who's reliable on which topics. Let's say we're talking about a scientific expert making a scientific assertion. Best practice in determining the reliability of a scientist's assertion about something scientific is recognizing whether his assertion agrees with the vast consensus of the scientific community. Because when we're appealing to the authority of science, we shouldn't be appealing to what one scientist thinks. It doesn't matter what they think. We're appealing to what science as an enterprise or institution has to say about the matter. That's how science works. The consensus is meant to be what we appeal to. If 3% of scientists say A and 97% of scientists say B, you can't say science tells us A. You can say that science is wrong about B and give us your own reasons for making that claim, or that science is unreliable in general, but that's a different matter altogether. Therefore, when appealing to science, your argument should sort of look like this. Premise 1, the consensus of the scientific community is Z. Premise 2, the consensus of the scientific community is the most reliable information available. Conclusion, according to the most reliable information available, Z is true. If you're rejecting the scientific community's consensus, your argument is, premise 1, the consensus of the scientific community is Z. Premise 2, the consensus of the scientific community is not reliable. Conclusion being, we have no reason to think that Z is true. Many people rejecting a scientific consensus don't even realize they're making this argument, and often don't realize that they have the burden of proving premise 2, that the scientific community is not reliable. They would have to prove that the scientific community is unreliable on many issues, and proving that is an uphill battle. This mini-series has been made possible in part by Brilliant. You're watching this video, so chances are you have a genuine interest in logic, philosophy, and problem solving. Want to further your mastery? You should check out this fascinating online learning service. With Brilliant, you can solve hands-on puzzles and problems developed by professors and expert professionals from all over the world. Brush up on your skills when it comes to logical fallacies, syllogisms, deductive reasoning, game theory, and other domains of philosophy, math, and science. Quickly become an all-around better thinker. Sign up for free by going to brilliant.org/critical thinking. I've put a link in the description under this video, and the first 200 people who visit brilliant.org/critical thinking will get 20% off an annual premium membership. Visit brilliant.org/critical thinking.